Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Don Siegel's film Two Mules for Sister Sara, starring Shirley MacLaine and Clint Eastwood. This is a Western in the sort of spaghetti Western vein, but not made in Italy. It was filmed in Mexico primarily. And it's an interesting film in that typically in Westerns from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, right? Mexicans are not presented incredibly favorably. But here, in Two Mules for Sister Sara, it's actually the Mexicans who are the good guys and the French, who would generally be considered white, are the bad guys. So this is something of a reversal, but it's not entirely a reversal, and we'll talk more about that. So this is a film set during the French intervention in Mexico, or the French invasion of Mexico, in between 1861 and 1867, when French Emperor Napoleon III basically attempted to subjugate Mexico and bring it into the French Empire, which was unsuccessful, which of course is why Mexico is not part of France and doesn't have a great tradition of French customs. So we start out with Clint Eastwood, his character Hogan, basically just sort of riding through the desert. And strikingly enough, we just get shot after shot of different wildlife. Like there's a mountain lion, there's a snake, there's a tarantula, there's whatever all there is. It's just wildlife shot after wildlife shot after wildlife shot throughout the credits. And Hogan is sort of riding through the desert. He comes upon these three dudes attempting to drunkenly rape a woman. He shoots two of them, throws a stick of dynamite down. This is going to become one of Hogan's trademarks. He's a big dynamite guy. The other guy takes the woman hostage, but then when he flees from the dynamite, Hogan shoots him, comes down, takes the fuse out of the dynamite. It doesn't blow up. He tells the woman to get her clothes on, and he starts taking whatever he can off the dead bodies. To Hogan's surprise, the clothes that this woman puts on is the habit of a nun. She introduces herself as Sister Sara. And what Hogan comes to learn is that Sister Sara is on the run because she is wanted by the French army for helping raise money for the Juaristas, the Mexican resistance fighters, portions of the regular Mexican army, along with volunteers resisting the French invasion. Hogan himself happens to be working pretty much as a mercenary for some Juaristas. The deal is basically they want to take this French garrison, which has a strongbox with a lot of gold in it, and in exchange for helping them do this, Hogan will get half of the gold. They more or less decide to join forces, particularly when Sister Sara is able to supply Hogan with a lot of the information that he had been riding to this town to find out. So she knows the logistics of this garrison because she has just come from that town where the church was right next to the garrison. And so she has sort of intimate knowledge of the French garrison, how many men they have, where their gold is kept, etc., because she says that she had been assigned by her mother superior to teach Spanish to some of the French officers, because she also spoke French. So The two head out for a while. They have to evade the French. There's various sort of run-ins, etc., etc. At one point, Hogan gets shot in the shoulder with an arrow by a band of Yaqui. This is a sort of interesting scene, I think, because Sister Sara basically wards off the Yaqui with her cross. She characterizes them as wild and pagan, but the church has reached some of them. But then she basically uses the mirror-like quality of her cross to reflect the sun into the face of the leader of this band of Yaqui. And he gets scared and they all run off, or ride off, really. They're on horses. So it's sort of an interesting thing there. Power of Christ compels you type of moment. Anyway, Hogan is wounded. She has to do some wilderness first aid, which involves a lot of alcohol, cutting a groove into the shaft of the arrow, filling it with gunpowder. He lights that. She has to shove it into his shoulder to cauterize the wound from the inside. And then they have to go on and blow up a train. The problem is they're blowing up a train at a trestle bridge. And so she has to climb up the trestle bridge and hang the dynamite. But she's afraid of heights. So there's that element of it. Then he has to shoot the dynamite. The problem with that is that he has been drinking a lot of alcohol to deal with the pain of the arrow in his shoulder. And so they're not 100% sure he's going to be able to hit it. But eventually he does hit it as the train is passing over it, blows it up. French train with supplies collapses down. So then they ride to Colonel Beltran, who's the commander of the Mexican resistance forces. They give him the information. They collect up as much sort of jewelry and gold and random stuff as they can. And Hogan takes it up to Texas to buy dynamite so they can attack this garrison. The idea is that they're going to attack on July 14th, Bastille Day, or the French's Independence Day. Because in the previous year, everybody in the garrison had gotten drunk, so it should be easy to take them out. The problem is, because Hogan and Sara blew up the train, they're now on high alert, and so the Mexican forces have to sort of sneak in and approach from 4 directions. One of the directions they want to approach from is below, from the dungeons, which they can get into from the outside by breaking down a particular wall. But the dungeon is locked, to keep the prisoners inside. So Hogan and Sara, since Sara is wanted by the French, the plan is for Hogan to take Sara in as though he has captured her and to try and collect the reward. And then they are going to get to the dungeon and unlock it. While that is going on, while they are setting up for this, they go through a brothel to get to the wall that they have to knock down to get into the dungeon. Here, it is revealed that Sara is not, in fact, Sister Sara, but is a, former now prostitute. Still possibly prostitute, but she hasn't been prostituting while she's been with Hogan. She has been undercover as a nun, both because it's easier for a nun to travel without drawing much attention, but also because Hogan had said a couple of times if she weren't a nun, he would stop helping her. Hogan is not real thrilled with this revelation because we find out that he has fallen in love with, possibly, or at least really wanted to have sex with Sara. And because she was a nun, or he thought she was a nun, he could not. So he's not pleased with that. But after the successful attack on the French garrison and Hogan comes back with a whole bunch of gold, they get to have as much sex as they want. So, happy ending, I suppose. So, again, I think this is it's an interesting film because it sort of anticipates what a number of revisionist Westerns will do, wherein greedy white people are the villains and Mexicans are the victims. So, you look at later movies in which sort of sadistic white people are doing terrible things to Mexicans or indigenous Americans, whatever it is. We have kind of a similar thing here, where the French are clearly the villains. Like, we witness the execution of a Mexican patriot by the French army. We see the deplorable conditions in which the Mexicans are kept in prison and the French garrison, etc., etc. So we have that sort of reversal, right? Because back in like the 50s, the sort of early days of the Western genre, it was always white people who were the heroes, right? Lone Ranger, John Wayne, Roy Rogers, people like this. They're always the hero. The white guy is always the hero. Here, the French, who are white, are the villains. And colonialism is posited as a bad thing. So in a sense, this is a kind of anti-colonial film, right? The destruction of French attempts to imperialize Mexico is regarded as a good thing. It is a desirable outcome. And that's good. Anti-colonialism is good. Don't do colonialism. Let colonies be free. Hashtag woke king, I guess. But what I find really striking about it is that while the Mexicans are the good guys, while the Mexican independence is the side we're supposed to be rooting for in the movie, and yet it is Hogan and Sara, Clint Eastwood and Sarah McLachlan, both of whom are white, that are the indispensable part of the plan to actually take the French garrison. The 100 or so Mexican army members or volunteers, yeah, they do the actual fighting at the end of the day, but they're really not that important. Even Colonel Beltran, who's in charge of them, doesn't contribute a massive amount, whereas Hogan and Sara contribute a disproportionate amount to this military victory, which, the fact that they're the white heroes of the film and that they are much more effective at this military campaign than the Mexican army, that's not ideal. But B, it also sets up that sort of, it sets up while also undercutting that notion of the American cowboy myth, right? In which the individual with a gun stands against the forces of evil. In this case, that is kind of true, in that Hogan plays a disproportionate role in defeating the French. And yet at the same time, he is only able to do that because he has the support of the Juaristas. So it's an interesting film because it both reinforces and subverts these problematic elements of Western film cinematography.